name is Athena Phillips. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and am pursuing my PhD in psychology currently. I am the founder of Integrative Trauma Treatment Center, which has been in operation for 12 years, and also the co-founder of Kalos online continuing education platform. There are a variety of common misperceptions about trauma that I wanted to challenge a little bit. The first one is that it's something that only certain people experience. It really is a shared experience that occurs, as part of being human. Experiencing trauma is a component of humanity that is inevitable and is normal. Another misconception about trauma is that it's really obvious, like a car accident or going to war or something like that. Yes, those can be traumatic experiences, and they're not the only kind. There are a lot more subtle forms of trauma that can affect us in ways that are difficult to articulate or identify, particularly those that are interpersonal in nature. There are a variety of coping strategies available to us with trauma. One of the biggest, I would say, is community. And ironically, when we are exposed to things that are scary, we're going to try and avoid the things that are scary. And when we're trying to avoid scary things, especially if scary things are other people, we might isolate ourselves. Or we might isolate ourselves because we don't trust how we're going to behave in the context of others, and we really want to be kind, but find it difficult to do so. So isolation is a common response to trauma, but ironically, the way that we heal is in the context of others. So we need other people as a foundation for recovery. That's thing one. Other coping strategies I like to suggest is, differentiating the past from the present, because what happens when we're traumatized by something, sometimes there's this veil. It changes the way that we are viewing the present. And it's almost like we're wearing a certain shade of sunglasses. It changes the coloring, it changes all the ways in which we're viewing what is happening in the moment, and we're viewing it through the lens of the past, so they're kind of superimposed on each other. And one way that we can sort of soften how we're feeling in the moment is to differentiate the past from the present. What's different now from what happened then? And just doing that gives you something to do. Another way that we can, another coping strategy for managing trauma is really to just pause. I know that seems simple and perhaps overly simplified, but giving ourselves a moment to take a breath gives us a little bit of space. And a little bit of space is a gift when we're struggling with being overwhelmed by emotion and memory and things like that. So space combined with distraction, focusing on something that brings us joy, something that's comforting, something that's easy, those are things that we can do in the moment. And finally, one of the big things that I like to suggest in moving through trauma is incorporating the body. The body is part of the healing process. The body was part of the injury. So of course we want to include it in the recovery. Our bodies can really help us learn that what is happening now is different from what happened in the past, but also our bodies need to be taught that the past is no longer happening. So we really want to incorporate physical activity, breath work. I know it's almost cliche now, but it really, breathing, if we're breathing, we're alive. So coming back to the basics really gives us something simple to focus on in order to regulate our nervous system, which is a key feature in this whole PTSD thing, that our nervous systems are dysregulated. So we need to help our bodies regulate themselves, learn the difference between past and present, and become grounded in the here and now. The first thing that happens is our body is going to be dysregulated, and it can be can occur on a continuum, and it also isn't a one or the other kind of thing. So we might sometimes be very anxious and very fearful, and then we may detach from reality, like we feel like the things around us are not real, or we might separate from our body or from other people and feel like neither of those is real. So trauma can also affect our sleep, our ability to eat, our ability to do basic things, our ability to connect with other people. It shows up in a lot of ways, but physically, it's a very uncomfortable way to be in the world. Either we're over-attached or we're under-attached, and maybe we're moving between the two. We're overreactive or we're under-reactive and we're moving between the two. So if our body is too activated, we want to do some things that will help it quiet. And some of the ways that we might do that is employing mindfulness strategies, and that can be as simple as looking out the window and enjoying what you're seeing, and just being really aware of what you're seeing and maybe what you're smelling or what you're hearing, etc. So being really rooted in our experiences in the moment, because if you're able to do that, then by definition, you're safe enough to do that. So if our body is overactive, we want to quiet it. If it's under responsive or underactive, then we want to do the opposite. We want to wake it up a little bit. So let's say we're feeling a little detached from the world. We might want to use some, like I'll often suggest to my clients that they have things to smell that are available to them in their pocket or by their bed if they wake up with nightmares or something. If they can have something to smell, smell really becomes this thing that reminds us. It's very easy to habitualize. So every time I smell lavender, I will feel peace. Or every time I feel citrus, I might feel happy. Those are things that we can do to counter whatever the body is feeling. And specifically when we're in a more dissociative state or a place where we're kind of separated from ourselves and reality, we want to wake the body up and reconnect it. And one of my favorite things to do that's pretty well known is you keep an orange in the freezer, and you can take it out of the freezer, you feel the cold, you can smell the citrus, and it kind of wakes the body up a little bit. So finding things you can touch, you can hear, you can see, and you can smell help wake up the body and bring it into the here and now. But employing a variety of physical and holistic strategies gives more opportunity to the body to become rooted in the present and to leave the past behind. Introducing trauma-sensitive education into organizational settings such as schools or workplaces, etc., is really important because trauma is an experience that we all will be exposed to at some point in our life. Nobody walks through a lifetime without being exposed to something. And so if we can, first of all, normalize the experience of trauma, then we give space for people to ask for help and to talk about what they need. And also, from an organizational perspective, we're doing what is really important to me as a trauma therapist, and that is preventing trauma. And it can show up in so many ways, but one of the big ways or big injuries that people struggle with is when they've experienced something bad or terrifying and those around them don't understand or maybe minimize their experience, cause their experience, and then deny it, etc. So having this information available to the masses really helps our society on the whole become healthier and helps us learn how to support each other in ways that are truly effective. There are specific communities that are more vulnerable to trauma, including specifically marginalized groups within any given society. This is true regardless of what society we live in, but those that are marginalized or on the periphery are always going to be more prone to not only, regular trauma, whatever you want to call that, but the trauma of being marginalized, which is another layer. And part of that is that the mainstream culture doesn't understand and in fact actively negates the experiences of those who reside, of minority groups. So when we're working with a minority population, approaching it with humility and cultural intelligence is really important. Assuming that our lens is the best lens is dangerous to those who have experienced, who live with experiences that are not the same or don't match that of the mainstream culture. So whenever we're approaching or working with those who differ from us, first of all, I like to give the opportunity for somebody to work with someone who understands so that they're not doing the work. They're not having to educate me as a provider or or whoever is working with them on what their experience is like, because that requires effort, and that's not what they're here to see us for. So the first thing is to work with clients or people who've experienced trauma within a marginalized population or a community on expanding resources within the community versus trying to be the direct provider and or versus being the one who's providing treatment. If there are no other options, then it's our duty to educate ourselves before we're providing treatment or any kind of support within a community that is different from our own. And that's a basic way of showing respect and giving ourselves an opportunity to learn more, which is crucial to being successful in treatment.